What up, y'all? So it's about to be a whole lot of spoilers today. So I'm gonna give whoever's watching this a second to click away, because if you don't want to hear anything about Spider-Man Brand New Day, Lanterns, or House of Dragon, um, yeah, just float on right now. Um, give 2, 3 more seconds. Spoiler alert. All right, let's get right into it. All right, so Spider-Man Brand New Day. Overall thoughts, amazing. It's a pretty dope movie. Um, I think personally, I would say overall, it is the best Tom Holland Spider-Man that we've seen so far. I got a couple of things I want to talk about in my notes, that I have here. I think the first, take all this with a grain of salt. Like I said, first off, it's an amazing Spider-Man movie. It's an amazing live action. I know it might not technically be MCU; it's a Sony version, but to me, as a Marvel comics person, it's probably one of the better representations of the experience that I feel like you got in your head when you read a Marvel comic, especially being from New York City and like having all these different superheroes and characters interact. Um, so the first thing I'm going to say is a little bit of a nitpick, but the accent. I think the accent is pumped up a notch. They pumped up the New York accent a notch, which I'm glad that he sounds like a New Yorker, but it sounds like a few times, and this is me again being nitpicky as a New Yorker, when I hear people trying to do a New York accent and it sounds like they're trying, it blends over a little bit into a Boston accent. So this time, Tom Holland Spidey sounds like he's from New York. But sometimes it was like a little too hard. He was trying to do it a little bit too much. It sounded like a dude from Boston. With that said, um, I think also the the success that I feel that they're having with this representation of Spidey is because we got to see um, Spider-Man No Way Home. We got to see all three of the Spideys, and everybody loves for different reasons. And the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, I always felt he wasn't a great Parker, but he was really good at being Spider-Man. His body language, his tone with being sarcastic without necessarily being super hurtful. Um, I think that they took those notes that they saw how people reacted from that movie and they blended all that in. So with that said, like Spider-Man is just a little bit more cocky, and he's just funnier. He's just a little bit more funny and sarcastic and irritable New Yorker. Like his whole relationship with Frank, um, you could kind of see that coming out. Um, I think one of the things too that I thought was great about having Frank in there was you get to see through context of the other superheroes who Spider-Man really is. You get to see how, and I feel like it's very similar to what they did with the new Superman movie, where you get to see how much of a Boy Scout Superman is because you see him in the context of the other superheroes. With other superheroes, yeah, they're heroes, but they're like a little bit more like, we don't care. We're gonna take this monster down, or like their line is a little bit different than what Superman's line is, and I feel like you see that with Spider-Man in context with the Punishers. Like, all right, you see where his line is and where he draws the line. Um, I think fighting ninjas was pretty cool, even though, you know, again, one of my nitpicks is they nerfed Spider-Man in the live action films a lot, because in the comic books they would always go out of their way to say like no one can touch Spider-Man. Like because of his spider sense combined with his agility, like you literally cannot lay a hand on him. There's no way. Which leads me to like the whole new, and I think they sort of like trying to retcon that with the Peter's evolution. with the organic webs, and then a true spider sense finally. Like Tom Holland gets a true spider sense like Toby had, where you like it's almost like things slow down to the point where like yeah, even ninjas shouldn't even be able to put a hand on. And on that point, you know, it was weird watching in the theater and you see like, oh, you know, damage controls working with the hand. That should have been a red flag. That to me was like obvious foreshadowing. Like, these people kind of shady. You don't just call the hand some innocent kids or whatever. Yeah, there was a few red flags with that. What else do I have on my notes? Oh, on the sort of I don't know side, um, you know, introducing Jean Grey into the Spider-Man universe is a little. I don't know where they're gonna go with it, so I'm gonna reserve judgment. I'm not gonna say it's completely bonkers, but it's a little unorthodox. Having Parker create the tech that nullifies the mutant gene, that's a slippery slope, but maybe that's the point why they brought it in there. Maybe that's the thing that's going to really tie Parker into the new MCU. But to me, that's just like, you know, Peter. That would be a real sticking point for Peter going forward. Like the amount of guilt he's going to feel once that tech becomes like a thing to oppress a whole race is kind of crazy. I love the Punisher Hulk Spider-Man fight. That was like right out of the comic books. I love the comedy in it. I love the fact that Frank, even though he knows he's totally outclassed, he still is gonna go try and help Spider-Man. And it's like that's another note of like the context between two heroes and how they look at morality. Like, you know, and you kind of look at Frank like, even though he's extreme, here's a guy who's willing to lay it all on line, even if he knows he's outclassed because he feels like he's got to help his friend. Even though there's points where in the movie where I'm like, how's the Punisher not getting rushed by police constantly? Like he's the Punisher. How's he just walking around? But you know, that's here nor there. Yeah, I think overall though, it was a great movie. Even though I said, you know, like I said, I don't know if the gene and mutants being sort of like really being a thing and revealed in a Spider-Man movie, how that's going to work going forward, and if that's going to feel a little awkward story-wise as we get deeper into the X universe. I think it was a pretty cool approach, and I think some of the superhero movies overall are learning how to get over this this plot point of always having to introduce a big bad as the central antagonist. Like, you know, just like Thunderbolts, it doesn't always have to be a big bad. Sometimes the heroes face an enemy from within. Sometimes, a lot of times in the comic books, heroes, you know, go against another hero until they figure out, oh, you're cool and I'm cool. And like, you know, that's a significant comic book trope. So I'm not too mad at it. I think everything worked out well story-wise. It's great for the plot in the sense like when you think that is sort of the end of the story, there's more to it, and then it kind of leaves you in a place where it's kind of a cliffhanger, like where things going to go, but also you wrap up a lot of like emotional arcs, especially with Parker not having any friends and being lonely, which I see some people online, you know, nitpicking with, but for me, you know, growing up reading comics in the late 80s, in the 90s, that's the Parker I grew up with. That was a definitive trait of Parker. He wasn't this cool guy who had a lot of friends. He was pretty much a loner, and because of the guilt he carried from that initial passing up of stopping that criminal who killed Uncle Ben, he carried a lot of guilt with him, and he just felt like, you know, focusing on being Spider-Man was the best thing, and not for financial gain or fame or anything like that. That was his thing. I would say like, yeah, they hit the nail in the head with that. And I was always annoyed with this version of golly gee, Mr. Stark, and oh, Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark. Like I hated that character trait. Like that wasn't the Peter Parker that I grew up reading and like I associated with. Like Parker did not, he was a genius in his own right. He was his own man. And to have everything Spider-Man is sort of like built around is, you know, built off of Stark tech and Stark being his role model and all that stuff was just, it was just kind of weird and it just felt kind of nasty to me as a Spider-Man fan. But you know, this whole reset is pretty dope. It's pretty dope, and I'm looking forward to what they got going on next with Spider-Man. But I can't wait to watch that joint again. Watch that joint again. All right, I'm gonna say spoiler again. Spoiler. But the next thing I want to talk about is really quickly is House of the Dragon, and this has been out for a while, so I don't think the spoilers are that significant with this. So I've watched Game of Thrones. I wouldn't say I'm a super fan or fan. Well, I like it. I just wouldn't say I'm a fan. You know, I do like it. And I've always thought Game of Thrones was kind of slow and heavy on the politics, but as you get through the seasons, there's a lot of payoffs. There's a lot of interesting characters. They may not be likable, and ultimately that's why I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of Game of Thrones. That I like the storytelling for the most part. I think it's a pretty good series, but they don't really have a lot of likable characters. As the storyline goes on, you get to see everybody's like pretty crappy. You know, outside of like really only Brienne of Tarth. Really, I mean most of the characters, 90% of them are revealed to be just terrible people. So I went into this House of the Dragon looking for, I guess, the same experience with sort of this politically driven show that was like eventually going to give you some payoffs and give you some mystery and some magic and some really otherworldly stuff. So far, I've made it through a binge through season 1 and 2. Season 1 felt like homework. It is it's slower than the original Game of Thrones, which is surprising, and it's even more heavy-handed with the politics because it's like the politics of just this one house, and I just found the characters to not be that interesting. There's only a few that's interesting. Forget likable. There's only a few that are interesting, and I feel like some of the magic in the teasing of this supernatural fantasy world that we got in Game of Thrones, we don't get half as much in House of the Dragon. Yeah, there's more dragons, but it feels like it's less mysticism. The White Walkers are talked about, but we don't really get the real lore of it. And honestly, the political drama doesn't really heat up until I feel like you're in the middle of the second season. And then it's like, okay, but you know, I understand you have to get people familiar with the characters and get them to care about it before you can actually really create that tension and drama, and really have those payoffs. One thing I will say I do appreciate about this series as opposed to the original Game of Thrones is how they time jump. I do appreciate that. Like you jump in years later from some episodes, which is kind of cool. And you see how some of the events from previous episodes pay off years down the line. So I do appreciate that. I don't understand how you retcon black people though. That one is I just like it just fucks with me. I'm gonna just be honest. It just fucks with me. Like I just don't understand. Like I get it as a creator. Y'all got some notes. Y'all got some notes. Where are all the black people? There's like 3 black people in the whole series. And then all of a sudden in the past, there's black people on every level of the hierarchy. There's black people royals, there's black people as commoners, as small folk, whatever you want to call them, and warriors. And it's like, where did all these people go? This is 200 years in the past, right? So what happened? So this is what the past looked like, very diverse. But then you go 200 years into the future, no black people. All right, so there's that. Again, I'm only up to the second season. I'm probably gonna watch the third just to homework, do the homework. It's entertaining for the most part, and I'm the type of person like I get hooked on story. So once I'm invested somewhat in the story, all right, yeah, I at least want to see how this is going to pan out. And Damon, I think, is a very interesting character. Raina is an interesting character, I think. Aemond, obviously interesting, and I want to see where that goes. The guy with the bad leg, who's the master of whispers, I think he's very interesting. So there's a few characters that I want to see, like where is this going and where they're trying to take it. But no pun intended, they dragging it. Oh my God, they're dragging it. It's like, how the hell am I going into the third season with y'all barely just getting into the war? It's nuts. And I feel like we won't see the end of the war until like the 5th or 6th season or whatever, if I even last that long. But it's just funny to watch it and think like, some people complained with the original Game of Thrones wasn't enough dragons, and now we have more dragons, and it just seems more boring somehow. But that's the whole thing. But yeah, I'm gonna check out that third season and report back, see what how that looks, see if like it comes to sort of a little bit more, picks up the dramatic speed, I guess. Finally, spoilers. I want to talk about Lanterns. Woo! Lanterns. Saw the first episode last night. Lanterns is fire. Lanterns is fucking dope. And I want to give the props to, of course, the whole creative team, but I think the Damon Lindelof is him doing DC properties. I think is amazing. I think they just need to hit him up. Let I was gonna say Zack Snyder, but not Zack Snyder. James Gunn. Let him and James Gunn figure everything out, because I think those two have the right ideas. Lanterns was freaking dope. I mean, when people say it's like superhero, true detective, I think that's a appropriate sort of description. I think that's a perfect description. And I know like you can't, it's not exactly that, but for someone wanting to kind of sum up what it is, yeah. I think the dude, I forget his name. I always think of him as Coach from Friday Night Lights. I've always liked him. But the dude that they cast as Hal Jordan is perfect. He's perfect in the sense of Hal's arrogance or confidence, rather, but also how sometimes in the animation in some comics that I've read with Hal is like people and the other heroes and the people around him, they underestimate his intelligence because he's so cocky. And it's like, no, Hal's actually good at what he does. He just likes to fly off the mouth, and he kind of wants you to think he doesn't know what's going on, almost on some Columbo type shit. So I really like the way, Kyle Chandler. I love the way that they're playing it with that. Aaron Pierre, I was a little skeptical at first of him being Jon Stewart, but he nails it. He freaking nails it. And I think as a character point, what's great about what they're doing with him already in the first episode, and they kind of hint at this with in the cartoon, is that Jon Stewart's weakness is women, and like in the show already, they're setting you up that Jon is very straight-laced. He's very buttoned up or buttoned down, however you want to put it. He's very strict and discipline-driven with everything. He's a vegan. He works out. He's a military sniper. But you can see already where his character flaw is the ladies, and it's already gotten him into a compromising position. So I love that neither character is perfect. like they complement each other well. Where Hal's sort of this loose cannon, John is way more strict, but then there's areas where John is like, bro, what are you doing? So I like that. I like that the first episode, on a very, again, like a true detective sort of thing, gives you a reveal at the end of some grimmer stuff to come. So it's like first episode, just amazing. They gave you enough of showing what the power ring can do to keep you like, okay, this is a superhero show. But at the same time, it's like, what's going on here? You throw Hal into the mix of this event where there's a bunch of different people that have a bunch of different, you can obviously tell they all have some ulterior motives. So it's very like a police procedural drama show where like you as the audience member can tell, yeah, there's some shady characters going on, but I don't know who wants what. And you start to get the sense that Hal has a better idea of what's going on than everybody. Even though the other characters just think he's some washed guy who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing anymore. And also the fact that the ring just didn't choose him because he was unafraid. Like he seems like the best person for the job. Like he does care about his duty. So like, yeah, it's very good. And like, I think one of the scene that's going viral right now is the interrogation scene, obviously, which is like one of like 10 pole scenes for me. Just like if I would show somebody why they should watch this episode, I would show that scene. And I think, again, props to Damon Lindelof. I'm sorry, like I don't know, something in the water with Damon Lindelof, man. Like what he did on the Watchmen series, and then already I'm seeing what he's doing now. He just has this honesty about how he approaches what America really is, what America, for good or ill, with all of the racial classism, all the stuff we got going on. He speaks to that in a very, very real way. Also, it felt like a little bit like one of the Key and Peele sketches where the aliens came down and they tested the aliens by their level of racism. So I think that was great. But yeah, I cannot wait to see what they're cooking up next for the rest of the season, dude. Like I can't, I would love to see. Honestly, I'm already like, and I like Peacemaker. I did. But I think this is going to be better than Peacemaker. And I can't wait to see how they build out the broader DCU with this. I know we're probably going to see Guy Gardner, probably going to see more of the Lanterns. I know we're going to see Sinestro. But I would love to see finally a real decent incarnation of the Martian Manhunter in the new DCU. That would be incredible. And who knows? Who else is going to show up? You know, if they have the Big S show up, that would be crazy too. So yeah, definitely going to check out more of Lanterns, and see you on the next stream.